Welcome everyone. There's still people joining, but I think we can start moving on. My name is Nestor Fernandez. I am the co-coordinator of the Natura Connect project. It is a project funded by the Horizon Europe program of the European Union, where we are trying to design some support tools and create data and analysis for building the so-called Trans-European Nature Network. I will present the objectives of the project in 1 second. But first of all, I wanted to first welcome all of you. So this is the second webinar on connectivity that we organize in this project. And we will be presenting some of the results of this European project, but also we expect to get some inputs from you, because this is an exercise where we really want to get people involved, not only to know the products we are generating, but also to establish connections with other initiatives. I am here with some colleagues. Marit Snep from Europark Federation. Marit, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Nestor. Hello, everybody. Welcome from my side. I'm part of the Natura Connect project and also WCPA Europe. So from both of these entities, welcome to this webinar from my side. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Marit. Then Anna Seye-Hase. Anna?
Hi everyone, I'm Anna, I'm from Portugal. I'm working for the Natura Connect project on connectivity guidelines and also a bit of modeling. And yeah, I'll talk to you a bit more very soon, and thank you for being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna. Then Jeremy Dertien.
Hey everyone, my name is Jeremy Dertien. I'm a postdoc here at IDIV with Nestor, and I primarily focus on the pan-European connectivity modeling, and this will be presenting a little bit later today.
Okay, and then Erika Baida. Erika, can you introduce yourself?
Hello everybody. I am the Regional Vice Chair for WCPA Europe. And I'm going to tell you more about it at some point soon. So I'm not going to say more now.
Thank you. So yes, indeed, before we start, just a couple of housekeeping rules. First of all, feel free to open your camera when you have questions and unmute yourself. But during the presentations, we would really appreciate if you can keep yourself muted. Anytime you have questions, you can use the chat function. We will be monitoring the chat. And you will have the opportunity also to provide inputs and give opinions through some Mentimeter questions that we will be introducing during the webinar. We expect to finish at 5, so this is 2 hours. And we will have some, as I said, a couple of presentations, and then also some feedback exercises. So with this, I think we can just break the ice, and I believe that Marit has prepared already some activity for this.
Thank you. Yes, I'm just going to share my screen. Just a second. Just to know who is in the room, we thought it would be helpful to know, since this is a webinar organized by WCPA Europe and Natura Connect, who of you is actually a WCPA Europe member. So join us at menti.com and enter this code 12478421, or the code, the link that my colleague is just posting into the chat, I believe. So that's just, we have 2 questions. That's the first one, especially interesting for us to know if people then would like to learn more about WCPA Europe and maybe join this network. So I see that the majority so far is not a member. So the dissemination of this webinar has reached you somehow otherwise. A few members, which is great. Hello. Let's see if we get a few more answers. 24 so far. where are the WCPA Europe members? How many people are we? We are 48. Maybe you have never heard of WCPA Europe. It's part of IUCN, and Erika will tell us a little bit more about it in a few seconds. So maybe raising your interest if you don't know what kind of network that is. But yeah, good to know. And I will just move us to the next question, which might be a bit more interesting to you, certainly also for us. If you could magically create one ecological corridor anywhere in Europe to connect fragmented habitats, where would it be and why? So obviously this is a connectivity webinar on that topic, covering a pan-European analysis on connectivity and ecological corridors and everything that is behind that. So this is it's a bit deeper question, and you might need to think about it a little bit. Maybe something comes to your mind immediately, an area that you have been working on or that you're working on. So let's see how that connects also with the analysis that IDIF is doing. The green belt, of course, that would be amazing. Riparian area, cross EU. Yeah, climate adaptation, certainly important to consider. The amazing Carpathians. Po Valley.
There seem to be a number of Italians here.
It would be nice to have all these connections for sure. Chaplanica, Karaman, Stogova corridor. North Macedonia. We will share presentations after this webinar, including the results from the Mentimeter, so we can all look up these places and increase our geographical knowledge. Salmon rivers in Botanian Bay, Slovakia and Czech Republic. Thank you for responding and providing your ideas and visions. You are still welcome to enter more or to respond. Yeah, the Mentimeter will stay open a bit longer, so yeah, feel free to add any responses. And as I said, we will share it also afterwards. Thank you very much for this. We'll come back to the Mentimeter a bit later. So I will hand over back to Nestor.
Thank you, Marius. I will share now my presentation. I hope this works. Please let me know if you see my first slide. Yes, okay, very good. So I'm going to do a brief introduction of the Natura Connect project because the work we are doing here on connectivity is embedded in a much larger project where we also try to provide more scientific tools to support the development of new protected areas, expand protected areas, and of course, to increase the connectivity of European landscapes. So this project is motivated by the need to support the European Biodiversity Strategy for 2030, and which has three main objectives, I would say. First is to legally protect at least 30% of the land, and at least of which at least 1/3 is strictly protected. And there are many discussions about what that means. Second is to implement restoration measures on at least 20% of the land, and for this the European Nature Restoration Law has been approved recently. So this is a big new tool that we have for conservation in Europe. And finally, to enhance ecological connectivity and increase the resilience of the network to changes such as, for example, climate change, but also land use change and other anthropogenic changes. Now, in response to those challenges, so how to plan for designing conservation measures that address the EU biodiversity strategy, we built up the Natura Connect project. This is a project that involves 22 partner institutions from 12 different countries, and those are research institutions, universities, and some of the big major NGOs and policy experts and so on. So the overall goal of Natura Connect is to co-develop knowledge, tools, and capacity building to support the member states in developing the Trans-European Nature Network. So in a nutshell, what the Natura Connect project aims to is to provide data and also provide, but not only data, also the analytical tools to develop resilient nature protection in Europe. Our approach builds from the consideration of multiple value perspectives. This means that since there are many different opinions about what should be preserved in Europe, we are actually doing different analyses according to those different opinions. And finally, we have a strong component engaging with policy processes at multiple levels. That means European level, but also national and subnational levels, for which we have several of our colleague NGOs and associations participating in the project and helping with this. So I'm going to explain very briefly what are the overall goals of the project. We are not going into the fine details. We'll do that for the connectivity analysis, but not for the overall project. But the first goal that we are addressing is to define a blueprint for a trans-European network of protected areas that aims to address current gaps in protection. As you know, the Natura 2000 network is the main instrument for inconsistencies, let's say. Different countries define areas in a different way under different priorities and so on. So our main question is how can we analyze gaps in conservation in Europe, and then where can we propose improvements in the coverage of the Natura 2000 protected areas or other kind of protected areas. So for this, we already did some pilot analysis on the Trans-European Nature Network, considering different possible scenarios. So, for example, distributing priorities of conservation according to European level needs or according to national needs, but also under different scenarios of burden sharing. So how much land do each country contribute to protection? The second main objective is to define a blueprint for protecting and restoring multifunctional corridors. And I'll speak a bit later about what we mean with multifunctional corridors. This is the core topic of this workshop. And two of the main outputs of this task, there are more, but the two main ones is first, a set of guidelines, data and tools for connectivity conservation in Europe, and second, an analysis of the restoration priorities to increase the resilience of the network under, for example, climate change scenarios. For this, we are addressing connectivity from several different angles. On the one side, the structural connectivity. I saw that one of the responses in the Mentimeter questions was to develop corridors through areas heavily modified by people with infrastructures and so on. Well, this is one of the kind of analysis we are doing, yeah? Where do we need to establish better corridors to connect, for example, habitats under the UNIS classification that are heavily fragmented by intensive land use, infrastructures, urban areas, etc. But we are also addressing a second approach, which is what Jeremy is going to present later, which is the functional connectivity approach. So this means if we consider explicitly the biological requirement of different species, where should the corridors be implemented at the European level? The third main goal of Natura Connect is to engage with the stakeholders. And this is where this webinar we are doing today falls, but also many other activities that we have been done and we are planning for this year and the next year. We develop a co-design of several of the analysis and tools that we do over the project. We also organize information events. And one key aspect of our interaction with different stakeholders is the Natura Connect Moodle. So this is a learning platform where some of the tools that are developed in the project and some of the data are available or will be available. It's in development right now. So the first goal is developing models, planning scenarios, and projections. So conservation is not only about preserving what is needed to be preserved today, it's also about preserving what will be the future of nature. And what we do in the project is to consider different possible futures of nature according to different priorities. For example, whether we want to protect nature for the intrinsic value of nature, or we want to protect nature as an instrument for people. Yeah, this is what is called the nature for society approach. Or we would like to protect nature because it contains a big value in our culture. So under each of those different visions, we may need to focus on specific and different aspects of biodiversity and ecosystem services. So part of our analysis are precisely on that. Yeah. So under a changing world, where do we need to protect and where do we need to develop corridors according to those different visions of nature protection? So, for example, within this task, we are also helping to close gaps in ecological knowledge across Europe. So, for example, we developed the first compilation of openly available datasets on biodiversity in Europe. And you can access already our products here in the Natura Connect Rio collection that we will mention later. But also, we are developing, we are trying to analyze where are the gaps. There is a map missing here, sorry for that. Where are the gaps in biodiversity in Europe in terms of taxonomic gaps, but also geographic gaps, etc. And for example, we found significant data gaps for freshwater systems and big geographic biases in favor of Central and Northern Europe, while Southern and Eastern regions of Europe are underrepresented in terms of biodiversity data availability. Not only that, we are also looking at ecosystem services. So, for example, we are doing readed estimates for Europe on provision services of pollination, fraud regulation, soil loss prevention, but also recreational activities or opportunities, recreational opportunities. For example, here to the right, there is a map developed by our colleagues at the University of Warsaw of where are the hot areas providing recreational opportunities for visitors in forests. And one of the results that we found out is that at the European level, only the economical analysis of recreation has higher value in economic terms than, for example, the amount, the economic input from the wood extraction across all Europe. So we are mapping the opportunities for recreation according to different preferences for forest types. Finally, a fifth objective of our project is to review and deliver products on the best spatial planning practices and funding mechanisms. So, for example, we have made available already a collection of fact sheets on funding options, financing options for the Trans-European Nature Network. For example, looking at CAP mechanisms or life mechanisms and many others. As I said, you can find all those deliverables in the webpage of the project. And also in this objective of reviewing the spatial planning practices and funding mechanisms, we are going more into detail and deep in dive in 5 different case studies, in 6 different case studies across the entire Europe. Those case studies cover all the scales from, for example, local level in the Leipzig-Halle peri-urban region or in the Doñana region, national level in Portugal, France, and Finland, but also transboundary level in the entire Danube-Carpathian basin. So, as a summary, in this project, we are trying to provide support tools for designing the Trans-European Nature Network, combining all those different components. Biodiversity distribution predictions, projections of nature contributions to people, a specification or analysis of the best of the optimal distribution of future protected areas, of the optimal distribution of corridors, but also involving heavily stakeholders and going more in deep into specific study cases. Okay, so this is all for me. The goals on the next talks will be to introduce the ecological connectivity guidelines that we produce in the Natura Connect project. We also want to advance some to show you some preliminary results of European level analysis of the connectivity. And of course, we are willing to get your feedback in any input for both from the Mentimeter, your comments in voice and also in the chat. Thank you. And as I said at the beginning, this is a webinar that is co-organized with WCPA Europe. We hope to be able to strengthen the network of people interested in connectivity and connectivity analysis and connectivity planning. And I pass the word now to Erika.
Thank you very much. Well, it sounds a little bit odd now to interrupt the presentation and the topic of connectivity with a brief presentation of WCPA, but I will do so, hoping that many of you who are not yet members are interested to hear a little bit about what we are doing and maybe interested to become members and even contribute to our network's work. So I'm going to use just a few slides because maybe it helps you see better, understand better what I mean when I refer to some of WCPA Europe's activity. Well, first of all, because I didn't want to eat up a lot of time, I did not include a slide about IUCN and how IUCN is organized with all the commissions. But what I would like to say is that WCPA Europe actually is a regional not office because there is no office, a regional branch of WCPA, the World Commission on Protected Areas. So the World Commission on Protected Areas is a network of individuals with expertise in protected areas, with working in or for protected areas, and it is part of IUCN. And it's a network of volunteers. So everything what is being done in WCPA is a volunteer contribution. So here we are, that's the map of our region. You can see the blue countries, areas which are included in WCPA Europe. There are several regional offices in WCPA. Ours is actually the biggest, if you like, in terms of membership, because we have, as you can see here, a big blue slice of WCPA members. We have almost a quarter of the WCPA members in Europe. So it is a big network. And you will see in a moment what it means big. It means, I think by now we are over 750 people, 750 members. This is not an updated slide, I'm sorry. So from January, we have a few more people joining. We had a few more people joining. And as you can see by countries, well, the United Kingdom is on the top. In terms of numbers of members, and we have a few countries where the representation is not so big. And me personally, I would very much like to see more of maybe Central Eastern European members joining, because I think we have lots to share. What we did, the regional offices have a regional vice chair. The chair is Madhu Rao for WCPA. I am the regional vice chair for Europe, and I was supposed, on voluntary basis, to coordinate the work of this network for 4 years. And lucky me, I don't have to do it alone. We set up a steering committee. These are the volunteer members. And we together managed to do the things which I'm going to very briefly present to you. And why do we host this webinar, for example? Because in one of our priority topics, agreed with members back in, I think it was 2021, is this list. And connectivity and landscape level conservation was amongst the topics which were considered of high priority by members. Of course, alongside the 30-30 target, management effectiveness, OECMs, I think we have quite good progress there about discussing what should we do or not in Europe in OECMs. Actually, it's a big debate. Restoration, which is now a growing topic in the network, and we are going to have a first webinar soon. Strict protection, by the way, not the strict protection we are used to in protected areas, but the strict protection as defined by the EU. Old growth forests, and of course, we are always preoccupied by how to secure communication, good communication for such a large network. And just very briefly, what we are doing, just for you to get an idea what kind of activities we can do. Please bear in mind that this is a network across all the European countries with so many people, so it's difficult to organize face-to-face and very hands-on events, if you like, or activities. However, we really try to keep members together and informed. Therefore, we try to organize face-to-face meetings at any event, Europe scale event, where we can assemble and meet and discuss with our members, as you can see on this slide, at Europark conferences or any other IUCN or other events. And it's always very productive and very interesting to discuss face-to-face. We have workshops at various events, and we did set up some working groups where members can contribute with their expertise. And many webinars. That's the easiest way, of course, at least at a first glimpse, this is the easiest way to keep members informed and bring topics to the table, which members might be interested. Of course, here again, we need resources. We need members to organize these webinars and bring content to it. And here we have a very, very good example today with a European scale project brought in by the project team and facilitated by Marit, who is a member in the steering committee. So this is the kind of events we can organize to make your projects more known better, or involving people in your projects. So one of the activities I wanted, for example, to bring up as in a very concrete example is we do have now the second edition of a mentorship program. So this means that young professionals can benefit from the experience of other members. And these are the phases of the first round from the first round of mentorship program, which is already concluded. And we have a huge work plan. So we intend to organize several webinars this year. And hopefully we will have some members offering opportunities of other kinds of activities within their own projects. So this is a very, very brief presentation. And I hope you are interested in learning more. If so, you have the possibility to get on the website and register as a member. And perhaps why not an active member in this network, which is trying to give professional support to all those working in especially protected areas and conserved areas, but why not in conservation more generally? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Erika. Thank you very much. And I also encourage everyone to become a member. And I hope that this webinar helps to establish this network, as I said, of people interested in connectivity. We really need more connections here between different countries and different groups. All right, so now we are going directly to the topic of this webinar. We will start with a presentation by Anna Hase on the connectivity guidelines. This is a document that is available already in the internet, in the webpage of the Natura Connect project. And Anna is going to do a short introduction to the content of that document and the purpose and so on. And from there, we will open a session of questions and answers, and also we'll do some more Mentimeter activities. Anna, the floor is yours.
Hi again. So as Nestor mentioned, I will be presenting, I will guide you through the contents of these guidelines we produced in the Natura Connect project. And just to start from the start, what is ecological connectivity? Why is it important? So basically, ecological connectivity includes both functional and physical connections between habitats and ecosystems, so that the movement of species, but also of nutrients and ecological processes can happen across landscapes. And so ecological connectivity has a critical role in preserving biodiversity because it ensures not only the long-term persistence, but also the capacity of populations and communities to adapt to the environment, and so also to environmental change. And in this way, not only conserving, but also restoring connectivity are key to counteract the effects of ecosystem degradation, of habitat loss, of fragmentation also. But okay, why did we decide to produce this document? Why did we do the guidelines? Our aims were to address needs, opportunities, and also challenges for connectivity planning. And also we wanted to produce a document that would support the implementation of policy commitments for biodiversity, conservation, and restoration. In the sense, what we hope we did was to provide a review of available methods and also tools and data sources for connectivity planning. And we also provide recommendations for designing connectivity projects so that they can support coherent and resilient 10N, which, as Nestor has already mentioned, is a major aim of our Natura Connect project. But there are already other resources regarding these, and these include the very nice IUCN guidelines for conserving connectivity through ecological networks and corridors. These were produced by Hilti and colleagues in 2020. And just very briefly, of course, these contain also recommendations for implementing ecological connectivity, and they showcase different approaches for conserving ecological corridors by presenting several case studies that come from around the world and focus on the terrestrial ecosystems, but also on freshwater and marine ecosystems. And so our report is not intended to replace anything. The idea was to complement the IUCN guidelines, for instance, but also other existing literature by doing what? On one hand, providing a thorough review of approaches of information needs that were identified by stakeholders, and also practical recommendations. And one of the other things, of course, is that this document focuses on the specificities of the European context. And we also focus mainly on terrestrial ecosystems. So what do these guidelines contain? I will guide you through the contents. I will not go into many details because that would need a lot more time for that. And so I'll just start by telling you where you can find them. And this slide shows the links of where the guidelines are available. So as Nestor mentioned, I think already, you can find them in the Natura Connect internet site, and also as a preprint in the project's Rio collection. Of course, both are freely available for download. And I will also ask you, not now, but keep in mind that we would love to hear from you. So we prepared, we have a survey going on that aims at gathering feedback from people who read the guidelines. Of course, we think they are relevant, useful, and comprehensive, but we would like to hear from people who read the guidelines, because here we continuously aim at identifying interests and needs for capacity building. So this survey is available online in this link on the bottom of the slide. And yeah, the idea is that people go through the guidelines and then can answer, if they want to, these surveys so that we get their feedback, and you don't have to read the full guidelines. If you're interested in one or a few of the chapters, you can go through them, and then there are specific questions for each of the chapters. So we hope you will be interested in doing so after this presentation. And so the guidelines are divided into two main sections. The first one addresses key connectivity concepts, the policy context in Europe, and also how connectivity is implemented in Europe. And then in a second part, we provide some tools and guidelines for implementing connectivity projects. So we look at concepts, we look at policies. I'll go a bit about this in a minute. We present some projects that are being conducted in Europe. I'll speak a bit about gaps and needs that were identified regarding connectivity, conservation and planning, and also tools for implementing connectivity. And at the end, I will briefly present you with a framework we developed to design connectivity projects. So for part one, we start with a chapter talking about connectivity concepts and approaches. Here, the idea was to review some of the concepts related to different approaches when looking at connectivity. I'm not going into details, but we look at protected areas and ecological corridors. We also look at structural and functional connectivity, spatial scale issues. So we try to discuss some of the issues that we find when looking at connectivity. So then we have a chapter dedicated to policy instruments. Here, we looked at global and EU policy instruments and tried to check if and how connectivity is addressed in these documents. As you can imagine, the degree to which connectivity is addressed is a bit different depending on the policy instruments. And so just to give you the examples, we looked at the Global Biodiversity Framework, the EU Biodiversity Strategy, Forest Strategy, etc., to try and see what is the policy context in which we are nowadays. And then one, if you don't mind me saying, very nice part of this project and of the guidelines was that we developed a survey to collect information on the connectivity projects that are actually being implemented in Europe. So we launched a survey for people to participate, to collect information on these projects. And with this information, we produced a public database of these projects. And the idea here was to support knowledge sharing. So basically here, you can see a screenshot of what the database looks like. Basically, you can either search each individual project, or you have different search boxes where you can search by country, by ecosystem type, spatial scope, etc. The link is here at the bottom of the slide. And one of very important things that I cannot forget to mention is that the idea here is that this database is a living database where new information can be added. And so if you have a project, or if you know of someone who has a project, you can participate in this database. Please spread the word, because this is, we think, a very important information resource. And also it's a way of also increasing the visibility of your project, let's say. So here, for example, just showing you an example of a specific project on the conservation of connectivity in the West Carpathians for large carnivores, where you can find all the information regarding this project, including the participating institutions, the contacts, and then the different informations regarding the project. And then also I wanted to show you a bit of the results from this project. So we tried to summarize the information contained in these projects. This is information from 80 projects. as far as I remember. And so the targeted taxa were mostly, and not surprisingly, I would say, large carnivores. But then also, and I think a bit surprisingly, lots of projects were focusing on arthropods. Then for ecosystem types, let me just do something. We found that many projects are looking at forests, but also grasslands and agricultural areas. And then if you look at the spatial scope of the projects, most of them are conducted at subnational scales, but also many projects are transboundary and then also conducted at the local scale. For the thematic scope on the right-hand side, most of the projects are focusing on ecological corridors, but also a large number of projects here in the second, let's put it this way, second place, are focusing on ecological restoration already. And for connectivity goals, they were mainly to increase connectivity between protected areas, then to increase connectivity between habitat types. And then we had also a large number of projects that are focusing on protecting multiple species as opposed to protecting only one species or a specific group of species. Then on the right-hand side, we can see that the target users of the projects are mostly administrations, so from regional or local but also national administrations. And when asked if the projects were considering other benefits besides increased connectivity, in most of the cases, no other benefit was identified. But when other benefits besides increasing connectivity were identified, they were mainly recreation, which can connect to the importance that Nestor mentioned of recreation in Europe and the importance of this, and also climate regulation was identified commonly as another benefit of the projects. When asked about negative impacts, so what we asked was if there was any negative impact being identified from increased connectivity, potential negative impact. Most of the projects did not identify any negative impact, but for the ones that did identify potential negative impacts, the most frequent ones were increased human-wildlife conflicts and also the spread of invasive species. And then finally, most of the projects were not commissioned by any administration, so more than 50% of the projects included in the database are not commissioned. And also when asked if the project include any step for monitoring the effectiveness of the project, most of them did not include any monitoring. So more than 70% of the projects did not conduct any evaluation of its effectiveness. And regarding the priorities, gaps, and challenges in European planning, basically we identified these through a workshop that we organized already in 2023. This was a 2-day webinar, online workshop. You can find more information in this link here on the information. It gathered around 70 experts and stakeholders from multiple sectors, from the EU bodies, from local to regional administrations, researchers, NGOs, the private sector. So it was a nice set of people gathering and discussing ideas. And here also, I'm not going into details on what specifically was identified, but in the guidelines, we present what was identified here on which are the stakeholders' priorities for connectivity planning, also technical challenges and data needs that still exist for connectivity planning. And then, of course, on a more positive note, we try to identify and suggest some solutions to contribute to overcome challenges and needs. And then in part 2 of after looking
Anna,
at
sorry,
yes,
we'll need to speed up a bit in order to keep you on time. Yeah.
okay.
Thank you.
5. Let me know. I will. Okay. So then in part 2 we have tools and guidelines. I think it's not that long, but okay. Sorry. And here we present some tools and data sources for modeling connectivity. Again, not going into details, but basically we wanted to provide an overview of the most common modeling families, from least cost path, resistance kernels, circuit theory, the more complex agent-based models, etc. So basically what we do, I'm not going through this table, Nestor, don't panic, but just to show you that we provide information on the most common modeling families, give examples, talk about the data needs, what data do you need to use a given type of modeling technique, examples of applications, and also software and packages that are already available for people to use these different modeling techniques. And also for data sources, we provide resources for people to find information on different variables. And then finally, we propose a framework for connectivity, conservation, and planning. Also, sorry, just going very briefly, this is the scheme of the framework. Of course, we present more details and examples and checklists in the guidelines, but basically we propose a framework that is composed of 5 steps, which is at least supposed to help you structure a given connectivity project if you're planning to do so. And so to guide people and to provide information of things that must not be forgotten when planning and implementing a connectivity project. So from scoping and problem assessment, then we set objectives which should be very clearly established from the beginning and very well communicated with everyone involved in the project. Then, of course, we should select our analysis, the analysis we are going to use, which data we need to prepare the data for analysis. Of course, we need to assess connectivity. And then the 5th step, we implement, we monitor, and we evaluate. And let me just tell you that despite the fact that I'm presenting this in a very linear way and with a step from 1 to 5, this should be an iterative process. So the idea is that we conduct continuous assessment and adaptive management so that things can be adapted if needed, and that everyone is on board and knows what is happening so that we can achieve the best result possible. And yeah, that's it from my side. I don't know if I can be the one doing this, maybe. So we have one question in Mentimeter, very simple one regarding the guidelines. So you can go through the link, Menti. It's the same one. Or if you're using your cell phone, you can use these QR codes. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Yes, indeed, we are going to ask you this Mentimeter question, and then we'll open the floor for questions. So the question, well, you may not be fully familiar with the guidelines, but still you heard from Anna what they are about, and we are very interested in knowing from you for whom do you think that the guidelines are more relevant? There are different groups. Yes, so please feel free to provide your answers, and we'll stay here for 1 minute, and then we'll open the floor. So we can see that a lot of you think that those guidelines should be particularly relevant for regional and local conservation agencies and for planners. Much less for researchers. So this is somehow good because it is guidelines done by researchers for others. So I'm happy that you see it this way. And even less relevant in principle for the private sector. Okay, you can continue. Please put in your answers there. I see that 15 people have answered. We would really appreciate that more people vote here, because this really helps us understanding what are the needs for those guidelines. And meanwhile, we can open the floor for questions. So please raise your hand and speak your question, or write it in the chat. Okay. If you have questions also about the project in general, we will be happy to answer. And even if you are not, as I said, even if you are not familiar with the guidelines, it doesn't matter. Whatever question you may have about it, what is the content, or what is the intended purpose, whatever, just please ask. This is the opportunity for us to give you more information. All right. Okay, there is some question here. Until when will the project continue? So it is a little bit more than 1 more year. We plan, it's 1 year and a half more or less. So we plan to develop or to produce all the information about priorities for connectivity in Europe by the summer this year. And we will continue working on connectivity after that, because then we will incorporate aspects such as, for example, how connectivity can be planned in the context of climate change, of land use change, and also according to different perspectives of where restoration should be prioritized in space in Europe. So Dylan is interested in how significant we feel the uncertainty in climate change impacts on species habitats could influence approaches to connectivity planning. Well, this is a very, very good question. Do you want to get it, Jeremy, or I get it?
You could start if you want. Yeah, I mean, it's a very important consideration, and especially going into the future. And it's important to incorporate those climate change scenarios when we're thinking about how we create resistance models or resistance surfaces that then go into those models to make sure that we're incorporating those potential dynamics. And then especially also to have goals of making corridors or making connections that will enhance climate resilience for these species when they try to find new refugia. So it's very important.
Yeah, thank you. And indeed, in the project, we are incorporating a bit of that uncertainty, taking different climate change scenarios and the supposed effects or the predicted effects of those scenarios into the species. Indeed, the uncertainty of the species responses to climate change scenarios is something really difficult to deal with, yeah? But we hope that at least by considering different scenarios of climate change, at least we can have some confidence intervals there. Thank you for the question, important one. Okay, then if there are no more questions, we'll go to the next presentation by Jeremy, who will present some of the results we are already getting on the European level connectivity analysis. Just for your information, we are focusing now on the European level analysis of connectivity and priorities for developing corridors. But in the project, we are also going more into the detail, as I presented at the very beginning, into some specific case studies at the regional and national levels, and also transboundary. So Jeremy, please.
All right, thank you very much for attending today. Really appreciate your attention. As Nestor said, my main task here in the Natura Connect is modeling this ecological connectivity for the pan-European scale and developing a framework to do this at multiple scales. So parts of this have been covered already with the previous presentations, but globally, connectivity has become a major factor in the conservation science, and this has been a major. It's been seen, especially in the last 30 years or so, with a rapid increase in connectivity research and projects. And some of the biggest and most noticeable projects on the landscape are things like green bridges or underpasses that enable connectivity and movement across linear infrastructure. With these projects, however, there's also this potential, as we saw with the survey from the connectivity projects of Europe, for potential difficulties with increasing human-wildlife conflict and invasive species. But this human-wildlife conflict can also be a factor when we're not allowing for proper connectivity and animals are moving across the landscape without corridors. Now, exactly why are we here? The main factors are...
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
Okay.
now I see.
The main factors are around human fragmentation of habitat and the creation of unsuitable habitat and impervious cover. And so especially in the current European landscape context, we're of these 4 circles more on the far right side, and we want to try with the Trans-European Nature Network to move more towards the center of some connections of protected areas. Beyond unsuitable habitat, then there's also the factors of linear infrastructure, such as roads and walls and railways, that in many different ways and oftentimes unpredictable ways impact how connectivity for ecological connectivity and wildlife connectivity is impacted. Now, just an aside, fragmentation isn't just from human factors, but we also need to consider the natural landscape differences that can also impact how species or processes are fragmented on the landscape. And volcanic eruptions being one of probably more difficult ones for me, per se, but other ones such as topography and climate variability become important in understanding the connectivity going into the future. And this fragmentation has multiple impacts, and it's the reasoning why it's become such a major interest for so many legislative bodies, because it impacts things from dispersal to genetic diversity, all the way leading to abundance and community abundance of species and communities, and also impacting nutrient cycles and then decreasing in flood regulation. And so then when we're thinking about how we want, because of all these different types of impacts, when we're thinking about the timescale in which we're interested in protecting corridors, we need to think not from both the individual movement of an animal all the way to a century of genetic flow. And so it needs to be a resilient corridor network. And so finally, as we've hit on, this has garnered the attention and the importance shown in the importance through all these different forms of legislation and frameworks in which has brought about the Natura Connect project. Now, specifically in the Natura Connect project and in my task, I am focused on creating or assisting in creation of many different types of data products and frameworks. First of all, being this multi-taxa terrestrial wall-to-wall connectivity mapping for many different archetypes. We're also working, as Nestor had said, on structural UNIS habitat connectivity for all the different UNIS habitat types, as well as freshwater connectivity, and then finally, an actual prioritization of corridors between protected areas that's reaching all the way across Europe. So I'll get into the connectivity modeling. I'm not going to just present the methods all together at once and the results. I'm going to kind of mix them together so that you can see what's producing what and how they all fit together. So this is a bit of a summation of what I was just presenting, though. So we're doing omniscape models. So we're using a circuit theory base to create this omnidirectional connectivity maps for all of Europe. For 26 different terrestrial archetypes, in total over 1,200 different species within those archetypes. And then these are feeding into creating a prioritization of the actual corridors between different protected areas. And so I'll focus first on this omniscape model and then I'll go into the corridor prioritization and today not addressing really the freshwater and riparian. So that's weird. So overall, this was really a 4-step process that we've developed in producing this prioritization of corridors, starting with a deriving of resistance surfaces for the different archetypes, and then going into that omnidirectional connectivity. So a product that's useful for at multiple scales to identify key priority pinch points in connectivity on the landscape. This, and then kind of simultaneously, was into identifying those protected area corridors, so working with the tens of thousands of protected areas and clustering them that are in close proximity to each other, and then creating corridor spaces between all of these major areas so that we could then use a combination of different metrics to actually prioritize them. So in pictograph form, this would be starting with something like this, where dark red is areas of high resistance to wildlife movement. This is for predators in general across Europe. So lighter areas are easier areas of travel. Moving then to this omnidirectional, where the dark reds and the greens are areas where there's really a defined pinching of potential movement on the landscape. And I'll come back to this later. Simultaneously looking at where those polygons and protected areas are and where the most important ones are for a graph. This is just a general one, but the darker blue ones are the areas that are technically the areas of higher importance. And then finally going to creating this actual corridor space where each one of these is an individual polygon connecting different protected areas. Now you might say that it's quite, there's lots of holes in it. And that's actually an important consideration to be finding is we can see these areas where, based on the dispersal distance of animals, we're not actually able to say that a corridor could exist just based off of their own biology. But starting at the very beginning of that, I was talking about resistance surfaces. This is the basis for most connectivity models, many connectivity models, and it's where a raster, so a grid of numbers and cells, so like a picture, each raster representing the potential resistance that an animal or process faces as it crosses the pixel space. And so this is the basis, and this is often based from species distribution models or landscape genetic models. Given that we were doing all archetypes, we based these off of species distribution models, and then also added in resistance that's often overlooked in species distribution models, such as the higher impact of roads, giant lakes, but then also using OpenStreetMap determined where wildlife passages are mapped. Around 1,000 or so are in that database across Europe, especially underpasses and green bridges. We then went into this electrical circuit-based models, and so this follows a similar tact as how electricity would move across the landscape, following the least resistant path and where it get condensed into very fine areas. It's the same factor with how wildlife or how ecological processes are then condensed in a very fine area, and those very condensed areas are those areas that you're most interested in preserving or in restoring. There's two different forms of these models, and I'll just say that we use this omnidirectional model, which allowed for not having to say going from one protected area to the other, but saying that animals exist all throughout the landscape. And that's really important as we understand animals exist everywhere. And this was that first data product I was talking about with omnidirectional connectivity. And so this in itself is used quite frequently when it comes to management of areas that are important for connectivity. And so just to break down the four colors, gray areas are areas that are definitively blocked from potential wildlife movement. So we talked about the Po Valley earlier. We can see where that is pretty much completely blocked from potential movement from the Eastern Alps. Whereas you can almost see the border of the Czech Republic in the parks that surround that as important key factors of connectivity. And you can spend all day breaking this map down, but you can start to get at some of the key areas of transboundary and mountain ranges that are important for connectivity. The good thing about this is it's omnidirectional, so it's not reliant just on where protected areas are. The difficulty with it, though, is that you can't actually classify specific corridors going from one protected area. You can, but sometimes it's difficult to actually find where those corridors are because it's a continuous raster. So we took the next step. So we're now down into this third blue square of working with the protected area polygons to then quantify what each node and what each link, so node being protected area, link the connections, actually quantifying the importance of those in a graph theoretic base. So you can kind of think of this also in social network analysis, where the most important person is often that biggest bubble in the middle. And if you lose that person, then the social network becomes most impacted. It's a very similar factor when it comes to protected areas analysis. And so this is a very very useful analysis for prioritizing at a very base level how the network, protected area network. So we did that we're doing this at different levels for different archetypes, using the amount of habitat within each protected area as an attribute for how important that protected area is within the network. And then we're also doing that, as I said, for the different links between the different network nodes. So we have this information on how important a protected area per se is, a link is, and then also the omniscape across the entire area. The last thing is we need to do is define the actual corridor space. Now, least cost paths were often used for this, but they're rather simple in that they're just the one path that an animal might move across from one protected area to another. Randomized shortest paths are similar, but they run thousands of iterations to classify a corridor going from one point to another point. And this can allow us to then convert to a binary, to just a polygon that actually can define the area of a corridor between two different protected areas. And once we have that, then we can extract all types of values for the landscape on that area, such as how vulnerable it is to development, different species that are present within the corridor, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing it allows us to do is actually extract those values that we got from Omniscape. So we can get at what the pinch points are, the connectivity importance at different points within the corridor itself. And if we add those three different values together, the different graph values together and the Omniscape values together, we can then get at individual corridor priority values. So all of these different steps can actually be done can provide different connectivity value, but this in a whole allows us to work at the pan-European scale. So in the end, we have something that looks like this. This is obviously, like we said, preliminary results. These are the earliest results on the randomized shortest path of the corridors. And this is around 4,900 different corridors created between different protected areas within or nearby Eurasian lynx habitat. And so it's a little difficult to see so the darker the blue areas are areas of higher importance to the network. But then I think one of the biggest things that you start to see is these areas that are disconnected from each other. So the limiting factor on these corridors was the max dispersal distance for lynx. And so we can start to see how this is, sorry, I must have lost my, this is Prague right here, and this is the Carpathians moving here. Obviously, this one in particular, this model used a very low amount for the protected area amount, so it's a lot busier, a number of corridors that are overlapping. But we can see with these dark blue areas, some of the most important corridors on the landscape. Perhaps a better way of looking at this is just iteratively going through what they might look like. So this is the border of Slovakia and Czech Republic right here. And then moving into Slovakia and the Carpathians. So two different potential populations of lynx. The darker the blue, the more important the protected area. Then switching the base map, but we can see how these preliminary corridors start to come out of connecting different types of protected areas. And this is just all of them put together. Then we can extract those internal values from the omnidirectional. So these deep red areas are the most important connectivity value for pinch points, and then bringing it all together. So dark blue and the red areas are the least important priority corridors, and then getting into the blues are the more important corridor priority maps. We can start to see how adding all those values together, we can get at actual ranking of corridors. So that's where we're at with that those models. Going forward, where it's what is exciting about this framework is the multi-step connectivity analysis, and it allows both for multiple places where people can stop an analysis and use those data products, but then also many different forms of evidence for prioritization. And then it's also flexible to multiple scales. So those graph numbers are going to vary depending on the scale that you're choosing. Moving forward, we're doing archetype-specific corridor prioritization, and then a total vertebrate continental prioritization. And then finally, as I said, the UNIS habitat types, and then also this freshwater riparian connectivity prioritization. So thank you very much for your attention. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. Thank you very much. We're still able to keep some participants here in the call. And with several of them already doing interesting questions in the chat, we can open now the round. Please don't be shy and ask your questions loud if you would like to do so. Otherwise, I will read the questions in the chat. So the first question that I see here is from Gloria Mossi, and she's asking, does this approach considers also functional connectivity?
Yes, it does. So structural and functional connectivity to me is a bit of a spectrum and not a binary between everything is structural where functional is only dealing with GPS data analysis. So for me, this is a functional connectivity in the sense that we're using species distribution information and the interaction that species can have with infrastructure, but it's not the purest form of functional connectivity, if that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Yes, indeed, we are using a range of different methods and slightly different conceptual ideas behind those methods. From purely, when we speak about structural, it's purely structural. We are looking almost exclusively to infrastructures and intensive land use and how they fragment, like, entire habitats without any specific incorporation of species requirements and so on. While what Jeremy just presented, it does include very specific habitat requirements and movement characteristics of those species, at least dispersal range, for example. Yeah. Now, next question is from Nili Roma. How work extensive was this methodology?
Nestor, what do you think? To develop the framework and to wade through all the different types of connectivity models to get towards this, it was rather intensive. There's Linkage Mapper, which is a mapping software that was developed in the late 2000s that does some of these things, but it's it's Python based or it's within ArcGIS primarily. So to specifically get at your question, where we're at now with the code that I've developed and the approaches, it's much less difficult for the people that want to implement it right now, and it's definitely something that we can work through.
Yeah. Thank you, Nelly, for your question. Maybe Jeremy, you can also, because one of the goals of this project is to provide the methods. We don't want just to deliver the data, or the maps. This is, of course, one of the goals of the project, but we also know that different agencies may have their own data or their own priorities in terms of which taxa they would like to use for connectivity analysis and not, like the multipurpose analysis we are doing. So one of our goals is actually providing those protocols and quite detailed protocols of those analyses so that they can be replicated. There are challenges associated to that. Maybe you can extend a bit on those.
Yeah, I mean, some of the challenges are there's certain levels that you obviously have to be, to maybe run parts of them in R. We're looking at ways of incorporating them in a more user-friendly basis. But Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be something where you'll be able to manage it to your specific area. So yeah, but happy to talk more individually too.
Yeah, thank you. Then there are a couple of more questions. I'll jump to the last one and then go to the next one because the last one is related to this one. So Hygiene, hello Hygiene, by the way, is asking if this will become available, for example, as an R package.
Yeah, we're hopeful. I can't. That's the ideal, but I can't be 100% confident that's going to come about. And so, at the very least, it'll be a system of different code functions and code that we can hand out free, obviously to use that way.
Yeah, indeed. At least all the code and the instructions will be available in the GitHub repository, and some of it will be also available in the learning platform in the Natura Connect Moodle. Yeah. Now, a more kind of conservation question or related to prioritization. Hannah is asking: is it considered all types of protected areas or only those under strict protection?
This is considering all types of protected areas. The one thing is it's specifically pulling out habitat that's above 50% probability for the animal to be using that area. So it's not just the strictly protected areas, but it is using a subsection of the habitat that is feasibly usable by the archetype or by the species.
Okay, does it answer your question, Hannah? Yeah, so indeed, actually in the next stage of the project, we are planning how to include those different perspectives of conservation. Those ones that I was mentioning at the very beginning, the intrinsic values of nature. So this is a nature for nature, protect nature as the protection of a set of ecological processes and so on, which is closer to the concept of strict protection versus other approaches that, for example, aim to protect services of nature that play an important role in for people. Yeah, so those different considerations may actually result in different priority areas to connect, but also in different areas where the corridors could go. So next stage in this analysis, in this connectivity analysis, will be looking at those different perspectives of what to protect, and of course, connecting better strictly protected areas is one of the goals. Yeah.
And if I could just add also, there's specific reason why when doing the corridor spaces, I included. So it's in some sense you can model corridors going from one edge of protected area to the other edge of the protected area. But in this sense, I wanted to make sure that interior parts of the protected areas were also being modeled as a part of the corridors in case those were key areas to be considered for strict protection as well. So it just allowed more flexibility.
Yeah, Gloria.
Yeah, I was curious about like input data for, you mentioned you have species distribution models. I was curious about like the presence absence distribution data, and more in general, if you will, in the GitHub repository or anywhere, you will also have kind of a manual like posting all the list of input sources that you used for your model.
Sure, definitely. So the SDMs are based off of our other work package in Grenoble. They've done models for all species distribution model, or all species vertebrate species, and are now working on plant species. And the vertebrate species are now available on the EVV portal. Is that
not yet?
Or they will be available eventually on the EVV portal, the data itself. And that in itself includes the information about their data inputs. Did that fully address your question?
Yes, so with project partners, you contribute to create the data set.
Yeah, that would be a simpler way of putting it too. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I can extend on it. So in Natura Connect, we also have the commitment to, so one of the important work packages of the project is to deliver spatial explicit data on species distributions, but also on predicted distributions of habitats and ecosystem service and demand. Yeah. We have different partners, so like the group of Wilfred Choulet in Grenoble, they are leading the part on species distributions and habitat distributions. Then Afke Schipper in PBL is leading the part on ecosystem services and so on. Now, all that data we intend to make available I will copy the address right now in the chat. Yeah, so some data is already available there, but it will be made available for everyone, so that all the models that we are presenting here can be replicated, or you can tune according to your needs the models, but still using the same data and so on. The Geom portal is an infrastructure that we also develop and manage here at IDIF, which serves several different projects, including, we are in conversations with the CBD, but also it serves several European projects in distributing open data, open spatially explicit data on biodiversity. And we use the concept of the essential biodiversity variables. We use a specific standard for organizing the data sets. All of you that have worked with spatial explicit data sets know that when you download a data set, you need to learn a lot about how that data set was produced. Well, we have developed a standard to facilitate this process and to facilitate the use of the data sets. And so the data set can be not only explored there in the EBU portal, but also you can download the data set. We provide also an R package to use the data sets and analyze it, and then import in whatever format you would like to use it. Yeah. Okay, Dylan, have you explored any case studies looking at how OECMs could play a role in improving protected area connectivity? The answer is no at the moment. This is again a good question by Dylan. So the OECMs are included in another part of the project on the spatial prioritization, partly, but we still did not consider how or even whether we will include them in the connectivity analysis. But yes, that could be a good suggestion. Yeah, I know that other projects are also working on including OECMs in connectivity analysis, so maybe this is an opportunity for collaboration.
Yeah, especially at the continental scale, it may be difficult since those are often a little bit more localized. Perhaps moving at a sub-regional scale for those analyses would be better.
Okay, so all great questions, and thank you, Jeremy, again for the presentation, the very good presentation. Now, I think I give it back to Marit again. We open the Mentimeter again. Am I right, Marit?
Yes, exactly. I'm just going to share my screen, and you can read through the questions. One moment. We will also post the link again in the chat. Yeah, there it is. And you should see the first question. So yeah, Nestor, just let me know when I should. Well, I will click through the slides, but we wait a bit.
Yeah, do you want to read the questions, or I go through?
You can go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Questions.
So now we want to get a few questions related to both presentations, yeah, to the connectivity guidelines and a bit also of what Jeremy has presented about the functional connectivity analysis we are doing. The first is within your role, we mean, in your kind of work that you are doing or the interest that you have. What are some specific challenges or obstacles that you encounter planning for ecological connectivity? Well, planning, or if you are not actually planning or analyzing ecological connectivity, still I'm pretty sure that you will have some insights on what obstacles do you think we still face for analyzing and planning for ecological connectivity. So this is a brainstorming, so please let's start. What are the main obstacles? Data availability is definitely an obstacle. Without good data, connectivity analysis, and everybody that works on ecological connectivity can tell you, are very difficult to do. Okay, a lot of content here. Legal issues. No designation methodology of methodology. So there is not an agreement on a specific methodology. No legal recognition of corridors in spatial planning, and all it is at the voluntary basis at the moment. Indeed, I think those are all very valid points. Ability to access the technical tools to allow sensible connectivity analysis. Yeah. So I guess this is related to some of the questions that we got today about accessing the codes, and often it is also code that requires some specialized knowledge to be able to run. Yeah. Data standards and methodology. Excellent. Establishing monitoring systems. Indeed, a very good point, because those monitoring systems are needed not only for providing the data, but also to understand the effectiveness of corridors. And this is when we were developing the guidelines, something we have discussed in extension. There are a lot of connectivity projects. So when we did this analysis of the connectivity projects that have been done in Europe, we found that very, very few of them actually included any kind of monitoring for assessing the effectiveness of connectivity of the corridors, for example, that were developed. High complexity and therefore change of bias. Indeed, complex methods can result in big uncertainties and bias. Now, more on the legal and regulatory aspects, regulations and private land outside national park borders. Indeed, it's very, very difficult to, it seems very difficult to implement conservation actions outside public land and already established areas. And this is also something that we are very well aware in the context of the nature restoration law, for example. Knowing what approaches work best to maximize biodiversity returns. Indeed, very good question. And this is also related to what are the priorities for connecting landscapes that you would select. Understanding the importance of connectivity. A lot of time should be scheduled for engaging with stakeholders to work on land for which use many ideas exist. Environmental assessments limitations. Yeah, look, a lot of feedback here. This is very interesting, and I like also that there are like two main blocks of feedback. One is on the capacity of analysis itself, and the second one is more on the administrative and the legal and regulatory limitations. Thank you very much. Maybe we can go to the next question, Merit. Now, if you work with connectivity analysis, or works that are done in your region, your country, or whatever, what is the quality and the availability of the data that fall into the following categories? So biodiversity data, land cover data, land ownership data, and then this is less of data, but training and governance structures. So this is one of the, this question is related to one of the challenges that we found in previous workshops, which is related to, so many stakeholders said there are big limitations in data quality, availability, and capacity building. So please, let's feel a bit this, and let's try to rank among all of those different types. Okay, I see it very interesting that the land cover data on average seems more important than the availability of biodiversity data. And then the rest is more or less at the same level according to your responses. training on connectivity and governance structures seem to have similar score in this challenge. Let's try to get a few more answers. So I think that 9 are still a bit too few. Even if you are not working with this, it doesn't matter, because I'm pretty sure that you may be familiar with what is happening in different administrations. Okay, let's jump to next question. Okay, so how useful are the following resources to your team? And if you don't have a team, again, it doesn't matter. So just how useful are those resources you believe are those resources for implementing and planning connectivity? And we have identified here a number of them, interactive, because some of them are things that we are considering in the project. So, for example, interactive maps for showing the results of the connectivity models, online training on theory, online training on the actual techniques, the methods, the tools, more webinars like the one today showing the results of this project and perhaps even of other projects. In-person workshops where some additional background and tools and methods can be explained and discussed. And then finally, the data set of European connectivity projects that we presented as a one-stop place where people can find other projects where you could get some inspiration. Okay, apparently, according to this audience, online training on connectivity models and tools seems the most important, followed by training on theory behind connectivity. So this shows like a big part of the group is mostly more connected to perhaps the analysis and the wish to do those analyses. And but then very closely following is the necessity for interactive maps of the model results, because, well, I understand that this is more like a less expert user tool where any person could land to that platform and explore their backyard or their country. All right, let's go to the next one. And again, I want to re-emphasize that in Natura Connect, we are also developing this learning platform, and that the data sets, the code, and the protocols will be available. What protected areas or landscape features do you believe are particularly important for European connectivity conservation? So this is a totally open question, yeah? So this can be based on your experience, or actually the place that you like most, or the kind of habitat, or the kind of landscape feature, or the kind of species that you like more. So let's brainstorm here. Okay. Old growth forests, rivers, showing here big. Natura 2000 habitat sites, the Carpathians, the Harz. The Harz is actually always quite a node in many connectivity analysis. Wetlands, field boundaries. So this is going more into the detail of habitat types. High nature value farmlands. This is indeed something very important. One difficulty that we are finding in this and in other projects also is how to define those high nature value farmland. And I think this is a very interesting question also to ask how we actually define those places, because there are different proposals and sometimes contradictory aspects. Francisco is here a big proponent of it and an expert. Francisco, do you want to jump in here and provide some ideas?
I can, yeah. The issue with the agricultural context is really challenging, and of course, high nature value farmland can be an important tool to maintain connectivity. Of course, others advocate that these areas, if abandoned, should be like rewilded, and that's why this is such an interesting and controversial topic. But the whole issue of connectivity in agricultural landscapes, in addition to the proposed indicators in the nature restoration law, we should not forget that there's a specific type of farmland, the high nature value, that has a strong connectivity potential. That's my take on it on 2 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Francisco. I see here KBAs also, K-biodiversity areas. Indeed, something that we got input from different people that connectivity analysis might also include or should include KBAs to increase the connectivity between those areas. Roadkill hotspots, that goes to very fine scale needs, roads, and farmlands again. Okay, I think we are reaching here we don't see many new responses, so I think we can. Do we have more questions, Marit? No, this is the last one. Okay, so thank you very much. Now I would like to open the floor for last time. You know, like just for you to comment on this webinar or in any aspect that you would like to recommend us or tell us or ask us. I open the floor before saying goodbye to all of you. Does anybody want to say something to us or to the rest of the participants? You can also use the chat, of course, as always. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks to you, Nell, for attending. Okay.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank you very much on behalf of WCPA Europe. I think these kind of information seminars are very, very important. So thank you so much for organizing it.
Thank you, Erika. Actually, I was about to give you the word for saying goodbye before, but I appreciate your words, and I hope that this also motivates more engagement with the WCPA, and there is this idea that to push forward the group on connectivity. So hopefully, sometime soon, someone takes the leadership and and can push this forward. I think there is a lot of interest on that. I see that also in the context of the implementation of the nature restoration law, there is more and more interest on these kind of things. And also, I heard in the context of the next European financial framework, also connectivity is going to be one of the important aspects that the European Commission will take forward. Yeah, Erika?
Well, based on what you just said, actually, I think I'll use this opportunity to ask people who are now here if anyone would pick up the challenge to set up, actually, to coordinate a working group on connectivity. We are trying very hard to find the coordinator. I think, Marit, is this for 1 year now that we try to find a coordinator, somebody who pulls together a working group and discuss what would be important for the members of WCPA to discuss, and maybe what kind of support they would need, as it was in one of your questions, and see how WCPA could contribute to bring that support to members. So if anybody's interested, I think you can contact either Marit or myself. I maybe put my email address in the chat, and we would be very happy to know that there are people interested in this working group and in coordinating it, of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Erika. Indeed, I fully support that. Gloria?
Yes, I wanted to add a point, ask a question like for what Erika just mentioned. Like I'm not part of the WCPA, but I'm part of the IUCN Commission on Ecosystem Management, and I was wondering like there are some common interests, right? So is there an idea to create synergies among the two commissions?
We can, of course, do that. I would be more than happy to see that happening, to really have a cooperation with another commission, and this could be the starting for such cooperations, and would be happy to discuss the chat about that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Then I think I'm going to close the seminar. I think it's really important that so many people attending this webinar. We appreciate the interest in the work of Natura Connect, but more generally the interest on addressing aspects of ecological connectivity planning at the European scale. I think this is really, really important for moving forward the European conservation agenda. I encourage you to visit the guidelines and provide. I spoke a lot with the mic muted. So I was doing a great speech. You missed it. Okay. So yes, I wanted to thank you all for the participation. I think we had a very good number of participants here, and also quite diverse. I would like to stress again that there are many opportunities in Natura Connect to get engaged through the project in code design activities, but also to get information if you don't want to participate directly on the activities, but still you're interested in the results of the project, on the events that we are organizing. Then please go to the stakeholders community portal and register there. And also spread the word. So any people that you may know that might be interested, just send the link, and you could send also our contacts. And yeah, get engaged. Later this year, we will actually organize a workshop in Brussels in November, I believe. Still date to be decided or to be confirmed. But we will, and this will be an in-person meeting. So we will continue organizing both in-person and online meetings related to different aspects of the project. So the best way to get informed about that is to get to become a member of the Natura Connect stakeholder community and then receive the newsletter. And finally, I wanted to thank to all the presenters today, to Jeremy, to Anna, and to Marit and Erika for organizing, and Erika very especially for co-hosting, and Marit, of course, for co-hosting this from the WCPA. I think this interaction starts now, and it's very important. Thank you. And Marit, I hand it over to you as organizer.
Well, thank you very much from my side. Glad we organized this webinar. It was very interesting also for me to hear all the presentations. And yeah, hope we have many of these sessions to learn from each other. And yeah, thanks to all the participants to stay until the end. See you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.